Hello, everybody. That's my signature line now, apparently. So, we're doing What If Deku and Eri were siblings and teleported to Demon Slayer. Yeah, I'm branching out. Whatever. Can't wait for this video to get 5 views. Anyway, so, people, I do want to establish a couple things. One, we are on the way to 2,000. Second, I'm moving soon, so you'll have to get ready for possibly a solid month of no content. Please don't unsubscribe or anything. I would really appreciate it if I don't end up going back to 2 subscribers. That'd be really nice. So, yeah, do want to clear that up. Also, subscribe to the guy who misspelled his name, Kakashi Hadike. So yeah, so this is Kito, onto the video. So, we start this video off when Izuku and Eri, who had just gone done with the school festival, were with Miria walking towards UA High School because they wanted to go to Aizawa to drop her off. And that's when Izuku says, "Mirio, watch out!" As Mirio's like, "What is it?" As some weird villain with a mysterious hat kicks Mirio into the wall, knocking him out with such an impact that the wall nearly shattered. As Izuku's like, "Who are you?" As Izuku then sees a portal under him and Eri. As Izuku quickly goes to grab Eri, as both him and Eri end up falling onto some very weird snow. As he gets up and says, "Where are we?" As he notices... Oh, one sec, guys. Okay, continuing on. So when Izuku catches Eri as they fall into snow, Izuku looks around and says, "Where are we?" As he sees villagers crowding around them as Izuku holds Eri and stands up as he ignites his One for All quirk and says, "Who are you people? What do you want from us? Are you with that villain?" As the villager says, "Oh, what's a villain? Have you seen Tanjiro? He should be arriving with the charcoal now. I hear that the neighbors at the other house over are out of it." As Izuku says, "Charcoal? It's been years since that. Oh my." As he looks to Eri, "We are far in the past." As he says, "Can we get something to help her cool off, please?" As Eri didn't have something that would fully get her out of cold, And, yeah. So, as one of the villagers points them in the direction of a clothing store, Izuku goes in and says, "Can you please spare a kimono? We have no currency. We're not from here." As the villager looks over suspiciously and says, "Prove it." As Izuku says, "How? Do you know who Tanjiro Kamado is?" As Izuku says, "Kamado? Never heard of him." As the villager says, "What fuel resource do you use?" As Izuku says, "Why would I know that? I'm not the person who's responsible for that." As the villager thinks, so he's a rich kid. Okay. As he gives Eri a very nice kimono, and also one to Izuku, because at that time, he was wearing his school uniform. Yeah. And this uniform was quite weird to the villagers because it looked quite good, but why was he wearing it in the snow? It was weird to them. As Izuku continues walking through the the village, and sees a kid in red hair, and the villagers call him Tanjiro. As Izuku goes over to the child, and he had put Eri in a basket he had saw near a trash can because it was empty and it looked pretty nice. So he was carrying Eri in it. As Tanjiro is like, "Oh, do you need charcoal too?" As Izuku says, "Charcoal? No, I don't." You're Tanjiro, right?" As Tanjiro says, "Yes, sir." "Why?" As Izuku says, "Well, I need to discuss something with you. You seem trustworthy. Can you follow us?" As Tanjiro says, "Yeah, sure." As he goes to one of the nice villagers and says, "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, go get my parents." As he goes to quickly follow Izuku and Eri. As Izuku goes behind the building and says, "We're not from here. We don't know exactly what's happening. Me and Eri here were walking home from our school festival, if you know what that is. And we were fighting a villain and we got teleported here. And we don't know how." As Tanjiro can't process anything at all, he says, "What's teleport mean?" As Izuku says, "Oh, think of it as, what year is it, Mr. Tanjiro?" As Tanjiro says, "You'd have to ask my mother for that. That's not something I would know." As Izuku says, "Oh, okay. Then let's go ask your mother." As they quickly go to where the household is. But as they're walking home, Tanjiro comes back and gets the coal. Because either way, they were going to their parents. Well, Tanjiro's parents. And Izuku says, "Eri, I hope this doesn't startle you much, but it'll probably be a long time before we get back." As she says, "That's fine, Mr. Deku." As Izuku continues walking with Tanjiro as they arrive at the building and see a man quickly scurry away fast. As Izuku says, "Wonder who that was. Was that your dad?" As Tanjiro stops and says, "What do you mean? Did you see a man?" As Izuku says, "Yeah, he was in a black kimono." He scurried off quite quickly as Tanjiro's eyes flash a very terrified red as tears begin coming down his face as he walks into his house and opens the door and sees a bloodbath of bodies. The entire family is dead. As Izuku comes to his side and says, "Oh my, what the, that man?" As he looks to Tanjiro, as Tanjiro falls onto the ground and starts screaming. As Izuku looks around to see if any of them survived, as he sees someone lunge at Tanjiro, as Izuku says, "Duck!" as he pushes Nezuko and says, "Eri, get out!" as he takes the entire backpack or whatever it was called off and says, "Okay, I don't want to hurt you," as Nezuko gets off from the ground and immediately lunges back at Izuku as Izuku powers up to 5% with One For All and kicks her in the gut, hitting her through a couple of trees as he heard a crack too and says, "Doesn't look like she's very strong either." As he looks to Tanjiro and says, "Do you know her?" As Tanjiro says, "Nezuko, is that you?" As Izuku says, "He knows her. Okay. What is she to you, Tanjiro?" As Tanjiro says, "She's my sister. Don't hurt her." As Izuku says, "Oh, okay." As he picks Eri back up in the basket and continues carrying it and says, "Okay, I'll help," as they quickly run over towards Nezuko. As Nezuko begins growling at them as Tanjiro begins trying to talk to her, but she isn't responding at all. But she's not hurting them now that Tanjiro's here. As he realizes maybe it's because she has no idea who Izuku or Eri are. As Izuku says, "Okay, Tanjiro," as he says, "Yeah? If I may ask you, do you have any idea who that man was?" As Izuku then sees Tanjiro's face and says, "I've never seen that man." "You said he had a black kimono?" As Izuku says, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure he had some black hair also. I don't know. I wasn't trying to look at him though. He was extremely quick." As Tanjiro says, "Okay, well," as he looks at Nezuko, he then looks to Izuku and says, "Izuku, can you knock her out?" As Izuku's shocked says, "Why would you want me to do that? She's being nice." As Nezuko begins to step in front of Tanjiro and just tries to defend Tanjiro, as Izuku says, "Whoa, calm down, Nezuko. He's not an enemy." As Izuku says, "Yeah, I'm not trying to hurt him. Trust me. If I wanted to, I could right now, but I have no intention of it. We're just not from here." As Nezuko continues growling, not trusting them, but Izuku says, "Eri, please." "Okay. Well, fine, you may." As he puts out the extra pair of sandals he had, quote unquote, found. And, desperate times count for desperate measures, just saying, Izuku. Sorry, guys, about that. As Izuku places the sandals down as Eri steps onto them with her kimono. I have no fan art for this, guys. Just imagine. As Nezuko looks at Eri, as Eri immediately tugs onto Izuku. As Izuku says, "Don't worry, Eri." As he charges up 8% of One for All in his right arm where Eri is. As Nezuko just calms down and then looks at Tanjiro and sees a little blood on his wrist, and immediately her veins pop out again, and she tries to bite Tanjiro. As Tanjiro gets his axe out and begins using it to block her teeth, as Izuku says, "Wait, who's that now?" As he gets 10% out with One for All and says, "You there, stop what you're doing." As Giyu, in the distance, just stands there and says, "Another demon. Okay. 3 demons," as he's talking to himself, by the way. As he starts using his water breathing techniques and charges at Izuku first, as Izuku with 20% now ducks immediately and holds all 4 of them down, and Izuku says, "Okay, Eri, on my back," as Eri jumps onto him, as Izuku tightens her back on with his uniform, as he says, "We're already in the same position as last time. I'm sorry, Eri." as Eri sheds a tear. As Izuku says, well, we don't know who you are, mister, but we have no intention of letting you harm Nezuko. As Giyu wonders to himself, how did they know that I'd harm her? As Izuku and Giyu begin fighting, but Giyu dodges while Izuku tries to hit him, but he's not fast enough, simply. I mean, a fully trained Hashira against Izuku. You guys could debate about that. I don't think Izuku would be fast enough. And the water breathing techniques would probably be too fast for him, I'd say. But as Izuku begins trying to hit him, he eventually gets a kick-off on Giyu's gut and kicks him into a tree. As Nezuko had calmed down and fell unconscious. As Izuku says, that was rough. Okay. As Giyu blinks, as Izuku's like, why did he close his eyes? As Izuku says, whoa, Eri, stay with me. As he falls unconscious along with Eri. As Giyu props them both up against a tree and looks over to Tanjiro, and they begin having the same exact conversation about demons and how they're supposed to be dangerous, but apparently Tanjiro's sister isn't exactly evil at all, because she's adorable. But, yeah, that's how that works. So, Izuku and Eri eventually wake up. Tanjiro was waiting for them and says, well, we have to go to this mountain. What was it called? Let me actually find out what it was called, guys. Okay. As Tanjiro says, come on, Izuku. As Izuku says, right. As Eri gets back in her basket and falls asleep again. As they begin walking to Mount Saiji. As both of them carry Nezuko over their shoulders. As Tanjiro says, so when do you think she'll wake up? As Izuku says, I hope soon. I'm just worried about when I'll be able to leave here. I'm very sorry about saying that, but I still have no idea why I'm here. As Tanjiro says, I'd imagine if you were just suddenly ripped away from your life, like what just happened, I'd imagine you'd be sad. As Izuku says, sorry for mentioning that topic. Well, are we there yet? As Tanjiro looks up and says, we have to go up all that hill. As 2 hours later, they eventually get up the entire hill. And finally trudging up the last step, a man named Seoji Urokodaki is waiting for them and says, well, what do we have here? Who asked for you to come here, boys? As Tanjiro says, a man called Giyu. As Izuku says, yeah, he was strong. Black hair. As both Tanjiro and Izuku fall unconscious from exhaustion. And that, everyone, is where I'll be leaving off on part 1 of What If Deku and Eri Were Siblings and Teleported the Demon Slayer universe. And yeah, this was part 1, and that is also Keto signing off. Goodbye, everybody.